Charlie Potter with us. Bama Online, part of 24/7 Sports. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What is up, Charlie? How are you today?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming back on. The Agiye Hall roller coaster yesterday was quite interesting. You were the first to report that he was not on the roster and that there was a reason why, according to your sources. At least on Twitter, Agiye seems surprised by that report. Where does it stand right now?
Yeah, there's situations like this that pop up all the time where somebody's, not on the roster, and sometimes it's a mistake. There's plenty of players they have to plug in place on there, and you always want to make sure nowadays that it wasn't a mistake, because I believe it was the last time I remember, it was Skylar DeLong, for me at least, to notice that someone wasn't on the roster, to kind of report it. Then I think it was maybe a couple hours later they threw him back on there. It turns out Skylar DeLong ended up transferring from Alabama. But there's several instances of this. I think Markel Benton's another one, the former linebacker. So I noticed he wasn't on there, and then did my due diligence, made sure it wasn't a mistake, and then threw it out and kind of blew up on the internet. And I've seen other people report other things, and we've only said that he's been removed from the roster, knowing that we're going to hear from Nick Saban later this afternoon after today's practice. There's no reason to speculate anything else with a guy like this that's just been up and down, like you said, throughout his career. And I don't think anybody's really surprised to see his name removed from the roster. I don't think anybody's really surprised to see Agiye's reaction on social media. It's just kind of been, what's been expected up to this point from all that he's posted on Twitter and things like that. So we'll see what happens. I think the writing's kind of on the wall there, but like I said, with this roster situation, things can change. But as of now, he was taken off the roster, and once it was made public, it wasn't a situation where UA scrambled and put him back on there. So we'll hear from Nick Saban later this afternoon, and he'll probably give an update. I don't know if it'll be a definitive one, but we'll see how this thing kind of transpires.
Hey, Charlie, sticking with wide receiver, I don't think anybody expects him to be Jameson Williams from 2021, but Jermaine Burton transferring over from Georgia. Do you just assume he is going to be the number one going into fall?
It's hard not to. I think if Ja'Cory Brooks was healthy this spring and able to go through practice, that competition for the number one receiver would be maybe a little more interesting. I still think Ja'Cory's a starter come the season, just because he's someone that stepped up when John Mechie and Jameson Williams were out for various reasons this past season. You saw it happened in the second half of the Auburn game when Jameson Williams was out with targeting, and then when John Mechie went down with his injury in the SEC championship game, Ja'Cory stepped into the starting role there as well. So I think that's probably his top competition. I maybe would mention Trayshawn Holden too. He's maybe not brought up enough just because he hasn't done a ton, but he's the most experienced receiver on Alabama's roster in terms of years in Tuscaloosa, and he has a pretty good rapport with Bryce Young. Just look at last year's A-Day game where I think he led the team in targets and had 14, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it's a situation where Jermaine Burton's come in and really impressed. Everybody's had nothing but good things to say about him. And you don't really bring a guy in that was a starter at Georgia to not start on a team that's kind of wide receiver deficient in terms of experience. So I think at the very least he's a first-teamer, but I agree. I think he'll probably be the number one receiver. I think he came to Tuscaloosa to see those targets and those receptions, the yards, everything increase and try to get in that first round like so many others.
Charlie Potter, Bama Online, part of 24/7 Sports, with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Before we move on from receiver, when you put that story out there yesterday and we talked about it on the show, people were flooding us with the name Aaron Anderson. Is that a name you've heard a lot of, and is that a type of guy that potentially could make you forget about somebody that would depart at the wide receiver spot?
Yeah, I think both of the young guys have impressed, Aaron Anderson and Kendrick Law, but it sounds like Aaron Anderson had a pretty good scrimmage. They've been they've really kept us out. We haven't been to practice since the preseason last year. Of course, reporters aren't allowed to go to the scrimmage, but they put out about a minute and a half video clip of the highlights from the scrimmage, which is appreciated. And one of the biggest things that's out to me is just Aaron Anderson and his ability. I think he's a guy that could certainly see an opportunity in the slot. I think JoJo Earl has also had a good spring. So, the competition there will be, intriguing to watch over the course of the spring and the summer and into fall camp. But yeah, I think, he's someone that, we've been high on at BOL. Aaron Anderson is. Our publisher, Tim Watts, may be the first person to be on him, and he's saying his praises throughout the recruiting process. But, it's a situation where, again, it's an inexperienced group. There's not a ton of just first-team reps among the players that are on campus now. So losing someone potentially is never ideal after losing 3 starters and a guy like Javon Baker who's in that same boat. But to see some of these newcomers come in and immediately impress, I think is a little bit reassuring if you're Nick Saban and Alabama, just because you're going to need them to contribute, but they're also pushing the guys that are coming back, guys like a JoJo Earl, a Christian Leary. And then when you hear from Nick Saban after the scrimmage, he mentions Aaron Anderson right after Jermaine Burton. I don't think that's a mistake or anything. I think that's indicative of what he's been able to do this spring and in the scrimmage. And then he follows that up by mentioning other guys in the slot. So I think there's really good competition there, and a big reason for that is the way that the freshmen come in and kind of impress so far.
Press 4 if you want more Charlie Potter on the JohnsonRVCenter.com hotline. Bama Online. And if I asked you the Alabama back end of the defense, the secondary, they bring in a big portal guy from LSU. You have some talent back. A couple of big throws, Charlie, in that national championship game that Stetson Bennett was able to drop in a small window that ended up being the difference in that contest. Where are you on the Alabama secondary? How do you think it's going to look, and how does that grade out in your mind?
Yeah, I think it has potential. You have a lot back at the safety position with Jordan Battle, DeMarco Helms, Brian Branch, Malachi Moore. Those last 2 guys playing primarily in the slot, but corner is going to be pretty fascinating to see how it plays out. You have both guys that were in that national championship game, but were newcomers, and Kool-Aid McKinstry and Kyrie Jackson. And Kool-Aid in that national championship game, I think that was his 5th or 6th start of the season, just because of the injuries to the other guys, Josh Jobe and Jalen Armour-Davis. So I would almost pencil him in just because of the way he played last season and the experience he gained. And I know Eli Ricks coming in it's another situation, just like Jermaine Burton, just like Jermaine Gibbs. I don't think he was brought in to be a depth guy. He's probably going to be a starter, but he's been in a black jersey. He didn't do, he played in a black jersey in the scrimmage, and I think this week he's kind of gotten out of it a little bit. But Kyrie Jackson is the guy that started the national championship game, and that was his first career start. I thought he did a decent job, but that inexperience kind of showed. So that battle kind of opposite Kool-Aid. And then, I think it's worth mentioning the guy like Terry Arnold, who's done some good things this spring. So corner, there's competition there. And if they can solidify that spot opposite Kool-Aid, and Kool-Aid can maybe take that next step from year 1 to year 2, I think the secondary can be improved. Jordan Battle's been a leader, and he's talked about improving his coverage skills. They got a couple of headhunters back there, and Helms and Branch. So if the corner spot can, one, stay healthy, which is an issue that they had last year and weren't able to do, and those guys can progress, I think the secondary can be strong. And if it is, given what they have, on the edge and inside and on the defensive line, this defense could be, like Will Anderson said, even better this year.
Fidari Mathis was a guy we brought up a couple of days ago, how underrated his play was last year, his leadership. Is there a guy that will step in and replace him?
From a leadership standpoint, it's something that DJ Dell's been doing that. So far, the leadership council sounds pretty small. There's 5 players on it, and 4 of those guys are defensive players, and 4 are guys that were on the leadership council last year. But DJ Dell's the new addition, and he's played a ton of football, started games as a true freshman. The problem with him is just staying healthy. It sounds like he is, and he's been doing well. They have the potential to be able to start 3 seniors up front on the defensive line with Dale and Byron Young and Justin Aboybe. I think that can maybe make up for some of what Fidarian Mathis brought to the table. But, Phil's also, he was a great guy to cover because of his character, his personality. And I think that kind of the hype he brought to his teammates, the way that he was able to motivate them, not only by the way he played, but just, the attitude he brought each and every day to the practice field, to the games and stuff like that. that's going to need to be replaced, and that's kind of hard to do. But from an interior pass rush standpoint, that's also going to be an area where they're going to have some guys step up, and that's outside of the three seniors that are already named. You're going to need guys like Tim Smith to take that next step into year 3. Some of these young players like Jamil Burrows, some of the freshmen, Jaheim Otis, the big guy that's done some good things with his body in terms of getting into shape. Tim Keenum. You mentioned the guys that have done well in the scrimmage and really impressed. He's a young guy that did so. So they're going to need some big guys up front to be able to provide that interior pass rush. And then I don't know if you have another feel just in terms of his personality and the persona that he brought to the room, but you can have some guys step up and be a voice and be a leader in that room, and it sounds like some of those guys are already doing that.
All right, you can go read Charlie's stuff there at Bama Online. We suggest you also follow him at Charlie_Potter. I never know when I'm being punked or not, so I'm just going to do this. I could end up looking like an idiot. But one of our listeners wants us to ask you about a rumor about Bryce Young transferring to USC. Is that rumor really out there, Charlie? Is that a message board rumor?
No, I think that's one of those dumb April Fool's Day stories, which are the worst.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's the worst kind of humor is April Fool's Day humor.
And well, the thing is, it's sites that I'm using air quotes here cover the team and puts that out there, and then you guys know the people on Facebook are going to believe some stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many times that was brought to our message board. People freaking out. It's just like, look at the calendar. Take a step back from the phone, take a deep breath, and realize how dumb that is.
Damn Russian bots.
Exactly.
Russian hackers. Hate those people.
All right. So Charlie says back down. Back down to DEFCON 5 on Bryce Young.
Hey, Charlie, I'm praying for you today. If you ask the Agiye Hall question, I'm praying it doesn't end up being you guys right there. We'll tell you when people are not on the roster.
But please ask it. Please ask it.
Coach, he's literally not on the roster.
With that's one of those situations where he might address it in the opening. So hopefully that'll be the case. I don't think he'll blow up on something like that because, again, it's one of those where you've been bitten so many times before by the roster and the changes they've made, but we're sitting here 24 hours later and he's still not on there, and UA isn't really batting an eye on that. So I think he'll have something ready.
Well, ask Saban if he knows what FS means.
Speaking of Facebook.
I'm not a very loud speaker, so he has a hard time already hearing me, and I can already imagine just the face he would make if I asked that question because he would have no idea what I was talking about.
Coach Agiye Hall said FS. Can you break that one down for
Well, if it has to do with Saban, it can be bad.
I know what the F is. Yeah,
he looks over at Max and he says, "What's he asking? I can't hear him."
Yeah, he might tap a hole in that podium up there if that question's there.
All right, so there you go. Charlie Potter. Go follow him on Twitter at Charlie_Potter. Read him at 24/7 Sports, Bama Online. Charlie, thank you so much for the time, man. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Charlie with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.